Dear professors and guests, a very warm welcome to one and all for joining with this international virtual conference. Hopefully, we are in the final day of our conference. It's my pleasure to welcome you once again and starts the day with the quote: "Success doesn't come from the what you do occasionally; it comes from what you do consistently." I'm happy to welcome Dr. S. Muthulakshmi Ma'am, Assistant Professor of Commerce, VHNSNC College, Virudunagar. She had completed MCom, MPhil, and PhD in Commerce discipline. She is also cleared NET. She has 15 years of teaching experience, in which her research experience spans into 7 years. Her area of interest are human resource management and marketing. Dr. S. Muthulakshmi Ma'am held several positions in our college, like NSS Program Officer, Joint Dean, Arts. She is holding membership in various committees such as Sports Committee, College Magazine Committee, Disciplinary Committee, and IQAC member, Fine Arts member, and Library Committee. She got minor project worth rupees 2,50,000 funded by UGC titled Work-Life Balance of Women Employees in IT Sector, an empirical study with reference to Tamil Nadu. She is also acted as activity coordinator of Social Roots of Gender Violence in India process related to economic, social, and cultural transformation among women sponsored by Rajiv Gandhi National Institute of Youth Development, and she is acting as a program coordinator of training program on capacity building and empowerment of rural women, Rajiv Gandhi National Institute of Youth Development, and she conducted national conferences as convener funded by UGC and ICSSR, and she is a part of 4 edited books. And Dr. S. Puthulakshmi Ma'am acted as resource person and chief guest to various workshops, training programs, and seminars. She served as a member in various activities in our college. She published more than 10 papers in popular ISSN journals and 18 papers in edited books. She presented nearly 35 papers in national and international level conferences. I am delighted to welcome session chair Dr. S. Muthulakshmi Ma'am to introduce Professor Dr. Sham Abdulrazak, Dean, Senior Lecturer, Department of Business and Management, AIMST University, Malaysia. Ma'am, please.
Welcome to our international conference on recent trends and innovation in science, engineering, and social science. Very good morning to all. So many of the critical elements that make a great customer engagement platform are similar to what made Outreach a great sales engagement platform. However, engagement platforms manage interactions even after the sales closes across the course of the customer lifecycle. A customer engagement platform is a single platform that optimizes every touch point throughout the customer journey to derive better outcomes for customers throughout all the interaction without your business. These touch points include all the disparate sales to the team which uses to engage customers, Salesforce and CRM, your inbox, dealers, calendars, social media, notes, and more. A customer engagement platform will empower the business to do this with a data-driven customer process that enables to team, implement, and execute processes that serve each and every customer scenario, measure the outcomes of every processes for all customer scenarios, and understand how these outcomes directly impact revenue, not just intermediary metrics. As COVID-19 pandemic continues, everyone from investors to executives and frontline staff are feeling the pressure of dealing with the fallout from this health crisis. However, leadership response during this time will define the character and the culture of a company, good, bad, or indifferent. Once we get to a new normal, you will want to get on with driving your business without any surprises. Supporting our clients with a strategy to manage through this period of anxiety, we emphasize the frontline managers are critical assets working to support your customers and most importantly, the success of your business. With this reality in mind, we have shared 3 best principles to help a finger on the pulse of the employee engagement and retention as team members are being asked to work in new, unusual, and stressful environments. And they are identifying how this new reality is driving the stress. The employees may feel increased workload and self-distancing. Things have to be observed regarding influence management, productivity, longevity, cost, post-COVID-19. Employees have to adjust to new reality and find situation for indoors isolation. And moreover, they have to ensure communication efficacy for productivity and examine the employee relationship management. The perfect customer engagement platform should be easy to use. It should be capable to move responsive to your customers' changing demands. It should offer the visibility needed to gauge each stage of the customer journey through KPIs, dashboards, analytics, and best practices. And it should work seamlessly with your CRM solution to support your sales pipeline. By nurturing the customer relationship, one can ensure that they remain healthy for many years to come. Don't waste the resources hunting down new customers. Instead, focus on retaining the ones. The right customer engagement platform will make it easier to nurture a more engaged, loyal customer base. So this pleasant day is going to get started.
Eminent personalities amongst amidst Dr. Sham Abdulrazak. Dr. Sham Abdulrazak is a Dean, Senior Lecturer, Faculty of Business and Management, AIMST University, Malaysia. A resource person is proficient in strategic management, consumer behavior, marketing communications, marketing research, and international business. Dr. Sham Abdulrazak is a postgraduate thesis supervisor and examiner. He is a university Senate member, quality audit member, committee member in University Marketing Council, and committee member of University Budget Task Force from February 2017 till date. A resource person was formerly a senior lecturer in University Sains, Malaysia, and Graduate School of Business. Sir is also proficient in corporate strategy. He was a marketing and accreditation program manager, co-editor of Asian Management Briefs, collaboration with Singapore Management. Dr. Sham Abdul Razak was a full-time PhD student and a part-time lecturer in 2012 to 2015, International Business Schools, University Technology Malaysia, and a full-time research scholar. Part-time lecturer at University Technology Malaysia, his teaching subjects include marketing management, business strategy, global business environment. Dr. Sham Abdul Razak was associate professor at Live Media Limited Singapore from 2009 to 2012. Creative Connections project for Standard Chartered Bank's Global Wholesale Banking Division. Project description: a high-level corporate and customer relationship management retreat for Standard Chartered 100 top clients, Asia Pacific, Middle East, and Africa. He was also a business director from 2005 to 2008 at Leo Burnett, Malaysia, and his key responsibilities includes managing existing client base and preparing new clients to the portfolio, develop sales and marketing plans and execution strategies to meet clients' products' corporate requirements, market research on clients' existing products and new products, develop and implement long-term brand and rebranding programs, execute and manage multidisciplinary programs in branding, advertising, PR events, interactive direct marketing for the clients. And also includes clients include Petronas, PNB, Sime Darby, MISC, UEM Land, Malaysia Airports, Malaysian Biotech Corporate, and Ministry of Women and Family Development. Dr. Sham Abdul Razak was also Director, Corporate Services, Technology Division, SPK Berhad in the year 2001 to 2005. His key responsibilities were Head of Corporate Services Department for the Technology Division, in charge of all the communications initiatives as well as the coordination of new business for the division. His academic qualifications are MSc Psychology ongoing in University of Malaysia, PhD Marketing Consumer Behavior in 2016. He is also a very eminent and proficient professor for us. Dr. Sham Razak is here amongst us. I deem it a privilege in welcoming a dynamic and energetic resource person, Dr. Sham Abdul Razak, to share his valuable inputs and engage us with engagement platforms, the new normal in business. Welcome you, sir.
Thank you, Prof. Lakshmi, for those kind words. Allow me to just switch on my presenting screen right now. First off, very good morning to everyone. I believe it's morning over there. Here in Malaysia, it's 1 p.m. I must express my gratitude to the organizing committee, first and foremost, for having given me the honor of speaking to an eminent group such as yourselves at the moment. And also, I would like to thank Prof. Lakshmi for giving all of us a very good warm-up on the topic of engagement platforms and so on. So as Prof. Lakshmi was mentioning earlier, my name is Dr. Sham Abdulrazak, and I'm currently attached to the Faculty of Business and Management at AIMST University in Malaysia. Prior to the, what do you call that, joining academia, I had probably about 15 years or so stint in the corporate sector, specifically in the advertising industry. So today I'll be honored to be able to speak to you about engagement platforms, the new normal in business. Now, before I begin, I think I need to break down certain key terms which I have put up on the screen. Now, by engagement platforms, as you will see in a short while, and as Prof. Lakshmi had briefed us earlier, it is much more than just engagement platforms, be it stakeholder or consumer engagement platforms. In a short while, as we go through the discussion, you'll see that essentially it affects the fundamental nature of business models as they are. And the other term which I probably need to break down is that I have taken the liberty to label it as the new normal, but in actual fact, it is not what you'll be seeing shortly. Is not new in the true sense of the word, but rather it has been evolving, developing. I think for the past 10, 15 years or so. Only that, if anything, only that during the post-pandemic era, post-COVID-19 era, we see that this has been amplified. Particularly by reason of the physical restrictions that have been imposed on us by our respective governments and so on. Now, having said that, allow me to move to the first slide. So now, previously, in what we used to know as the conventional sense, in the conventional sense, the traditional economy, something that we were used to probably growing up, and even up to say 15 years, 10 years or so, is something which is very prominent. And you will see that in a traditional economy, the first thing that would grab you is the fact that it is very much unidirectional. So what you have here is the producer, which is basically essentially the manufacturer, uh, the brand, the seller, whatever you want to call them, and you'll see that it is the on the other hand, you'll find that it is the consumer or the customer. Now, before that, I need to pause and highlight to you, and I'm sure that most of you are aware of this, that at the end of the day, the most fundamental basis to business is all about value creation. Now, if there's no value in the transactions, if there's no value being passed, exchanged, then there is no point in that particular transaction. And you will find that in throughout history, you find that even instances where initially probably that particular product or service had some measure of value, but then due to whatever changes in time, you find that the value is no longer relevant, then you find that the companies have either been, wound up, and you do not see the brands anymore, the products are not available anymore, and so on. But then again, you see, value is a very is an exciting term, if you ask me, because you see, if you were to ask me, Dr. Sham, what do you mean by value, then I will not be able to answer you directly. Simply because if you were to refer to the literature on value, you'll find hundreds, if not more, conceptualizations and definitions of what constitutes value. And all the more you find, if you move from one field of study to another, a value is conceptualized, is defined as something different. So I think for the purposes of our talk, really, I would like to adopt one particular definition, which I believe seems to be in a superseding position, something which is rather universal, and something which I believe can be applied regardless of whatever field of study or field of research that you are referring to, and that is, value is whatever that makes one person or the other person better off. So that better off can be financially, can be emotionally, can be physically, whatever it is. Yeah. So for the purposes of our discussion, I hope that we can adopt this and base our ensuing discussion on that. So now coming back to this diagram once again, you see that the as I said earlier, the movement is one way. It's very much top down. The consumer, the end user, the customer, whatever you want to call it, the market really merely inherits whatever positioning, whatever unique selling proposition that has been determined, predetermined by the producer slash manufacturer. Now, on that point, I've always found it rather amusing that I'm sure that most of you would have heard of the phrase customer is king. Well, customer is king or queen, depending on whatever your gender is. But I'm sure you have all come across this term, regardless whether you are, in the marketing field or not. Customer is king. But truly, if we were to look back in hindsight and look at this model really, which is representative of how things were before this previous decade, you find that customer is in no sense really king, because customer really is inheriting. It's a top-down measure, very little feedback, very little response, very little collaboration exists between the customer, the consumer, and the producer really. So if it is marketed, a product or service is marketed as such, then for the most part, the customer, the consumer just accepts it as it is. And that was how value creation, which was very much in the hands of the producer. Yeah. But now I think I did not emphasize that things have changed. Yeah, things have changed. The very fact that I'm speaking to you remotely through my laptop, I think is testament to our current condition. Yeah, for the past 10 or 15 years, there has been a proliferation of technology. Technology is literally in our hands. It's not just a saying, it's literally in our hands. Yeah, all of us are connected, so much so that if you were to consult the literature, you find that this current period, apart from being labeled as industry 4.0 and whatnot, this current period is also been labeled as hyper connectivity. Yeah, we are connected. If previously, prior to the current situation, previously we were just probably limited to our family members, our friends, acquaintances, colleagues, and so on. But now it's limitless, it's infinite. So much so that if there are any sociologists amongst you, you would be very familiar with the term ghost ties. Yeah. So ghost ties is being referred to now as connection between us and people that we really don't know really. So for example, let me illustrate. For example, I'm sure all of us, myself included, you know, in one way or another, either by way of Instagram or Facebook or any one of the social media apps that we resort to, somehow, some way, we are following some celebrity, some guru, some prominent person, some politician, and so on and so forth. Now, we may think in our mind of minds, we may think that somehow we know this person. Yeah, I know this person, and yeah, this person likes to do this, say this, buy this thing, consume that, consume this, and so on. But in reality, that person doesn't know you from any other person. Has never met you, and so on and so forth. But we are tied closely to this person, and whether we realize it or not, to some extent, our habits, particularly our consuming habits, is very much also influenced by these people that we have ghost ties with. Yeah, these are people that we don't know of. They've never heard about us. We know of them probably, but they've never heard about us. So in this hyper connected era, in this era where you find proliferation of digital devices and so on, naturally businesses have also evolved. And so you find that in this past 10, 15 years or so, there has been a deluge of brands coming out, brands that did not exist, say, 20 years ago. Yeah. And this on the screen, if you see, these are merely some a drop in the ocean, they say. I don't know if you're familiar with Grab, but Grab is very similar, if not the same as Uber. But Grab is king in Southeast Asia, so much so that Uber had to close shop and sell off their assets and business operations in Southeast Asia to Grab. Lazada is very much like your Flipkart. I believe Flipkart is one of the leading apps that you have in terms of online purchasing and so on in India. And of course, the rest, I think, pretty much international. eBay, Trivago for our trips, for hotels and so on. Airbnb as well. Food Panda, did they deliver food? Yeah, you can just order. I think you may have something like that as well. Very much so in India. LinkedIn, Alibaba, YouTube, and so on. Now, you find that, okay, you're looking at the screen and you see numerous, number of brands and so on. They are not similar in the sense that they may be dealing in different businesses. They may have different business models. They may be providing different manner of services and so on. But one thing there is one thing that unifies them all together, and is that the entire business model is actually based on a platform. And hence you find nowadays, if you were to read the literature, or even the common literature, phrases such as platform economy, collaborative economy, sharing economy, gig economy, so on and so forth. Now all of this is basically referring to the same thing, where the crux, the hub of the entire model is based on some manner of a platform. Yeah. So and as you just saw in the previous slide, and I'm sure we are all very familiar with platform businesses, as they are in our lives on a daily basis, whether we like it or not. And even more pronounced, I would say, during the post-pandemic era, simply because we are not able to move as freely as we used to. So instead of being able to walk into a mall to buy clothes or to buy groceries or anything like that, we have to now sit squarely in our homes and flip up our phones or laptops and do it that way remotely. Yeah. But as diverse as they may be in terms of their businesses, services, and so on, I think we can categorize them or classify them into several general groups, and this is what you're seeing at the moment on the screen. So let's begin with the first one, which is on the left here. So communication platforms, this is something which is very common. So I think something like WhatsApp, Skype, and even now Google Meet that we're using, resorting to at the moment. WeChat is particularly popular in China. Then you have social platforms, Facebook, of course, Instagram. We have some which are more inclined towards professional development, such as LinkedIn, even though it is essentially a social platform. Then moving on, you have media and content platforms. Yeah, media and content platforms. YouTube, and many people, I think in India even it's the same thing. Now consider themselves full-time YouTubers because they're making decent money from whatever videos that they are making, be it cooking lessons or being exercise fitness lessons and whatever whatnot. Twitter and Kindle, which is the devices, are all media and content based. Then of course you have excuse me, search platforms, Google. I know Microsoft has its own platform, but the Edge, I think it's, I believe. But I don't know how many of us actually end up using it. Most of us are so accustomed to Google, so much so that that the brand itself has become a verb, in the sense that it is normal for someone to say, hey, go and Google it. So a brand which has now entered into our vocabulary, even made into a verb. So what more can you, if you are the brand owner, I mean, what more could you wish for? Something like that. And of course, if there are some IT people within in our midst listening to this, then you have the Linux platform, Android platform, uh, which are basically development platforms. Also, they are also platforms by every sense of the word. Some of them are operating systems based, like Android, Linux, and so on. Some of them are app stores, like the Play Store and Apple App Store, so on and so forth. On the right hand side, you find that you have also service platforms. These are platforms which are essentially offering you services. Yeah. So some of this, which we were looking at earlier, Airbnb, but this is Airbnb in terms of hosting events. Yeah. So maybe you have Uber Eats, which is very similar to the Food Panda example which I gave you. Even the Grab brand, which I mentioned earlier, also has a component where they are offering food, online food service, delivery service, and so on, freelancer, and so on and so forth. Then moving on, you have asset sharing platforms. Yeah. So basically, where you get to share assets. Like for example, in I know I don't think this particular brand has made its way into Asia, be it Southeast Asia or Southeast Asia. It's a brand called Zipcar, and from what I read, it's extremely popular in the United States, especially amongst university students. Yeah, where they basically it's not something like Uber where someone drives you, you drive yourself, but it's like a shared. The car is actually shared, and you are meant to pick it up and leave it in designated spaces. It's called Zipcar, something like that, asset sharing. You have product platforms, of course, eBay, Amazon. Amazon, I know it's big in India, and transaction platforms. So transaction platforms are probably not that new, because I think as far back as I can remember, there's always been Visa and MasterCard and American Express and so on. Also now, what you don't see on the screen is e-wallets. I myself, I think for the past 2 years now, I've turned into a hardcore user of e-wallets, simply because it spares me the trouble of having to, every now and then queue up at an ATM machine to withdraw cash. Because every now and then, you run out of cash and you need to run to an ATM machine. Sometimes, the ATM is down and things like that. Now with e-wallet, I'm just able to flip my phone and switch on the proper app and pay for whatever it is that I'm buying. Yeah, I find it to be very convenient. I'm sure many of you are doing that as well. And then of course you have other platforms. Now, in spite of these differences in terms of the nature or the classification of the platforms. Now, let's take a step back and remember that we acknowledge that in any business, at the end of the day, it's all about value creation and value capture. If there is no value, there is no point of any business really, because nobody is going to nobody is going to be willing to part their hard-earned money to pay for whatever it is that you are touting to them or something like that, if they do not find it of any value. So of course, as I said earlier also, value is something which is, how do I say, something which is superfluous, something which cannot be, you cannot put your finger on, but we can just maybe, for the purposes of our discussion, take it as something that is contributing to us being better off than we were prior to that service, prior to that goods or products, and so on and so forth. Yeah. So value creation and value capture basically is the essence of any business model. So in the case of platform businesses, yeah. So platforms basically help sell products or services to generate content and so on. That is something that I think you all know very well. But for the most part, there are some characteristics, some characteristics that you see that are common among many of these platform businesses. First one being that often you find that the platform owner does not manufacture the product. Yeah, so in the case of eBay, Amazon, and so on, they don't. Of course, maybe in the case of Amazon, they make and they sell Kindle, which is their house brand product, and so on. But for the most part, you find that they do not manufacture the products. It's not made by them. It is made by some third party or someone else. Yeah. Also, moving on, you find that in terms of service as well, they themselves, the platform itself, does not literally provide the service. Yeah. So be it Airbnb or being Uber or anything like that. Yeah. And if you look at content generating media based platforms, you also find that for the most part, the content, the media is actually not generated, not created by the platform itself. So what you find is that at the end of the day, in sum, you find that the value creation is actually by way of a brokerage. Yeah. So now brokerage, of course, is a very common term. If you were to mention the word broker to a lay person, then I think he or she, the first mental picture that may come up in his or her mind would be, a property broker, perhaps. I'm looking to buy a house, for example, and then, how would I know where? I mean, how would I know where to find a house and how to negotiate and so on and so forth. And I would normally rely on a broker. And of course, in India, it's also very common even to find a groom or a bride using a broker. Well, we are not literally referring to those kind of brokers, but rather what we are referring to is the essence of brokering, where in actual fact it comprises of the act of intermediation. Now, before we get on to the various modes of brokerage or intermediation, let's see how, using some specific examples, let's see how this intermediation brokerage dynamics plays out. Yeah, so that you understand, because I think you are fully aware that the market has two sides, if at least two sides, the back end and the front end. The back end would be, your back end operations, your suppliers, your whatever, and so on. And on the front end, of course, it's the consumer facing end, customer facing end, depending. Now, if you look at the first one here, and I'm using Airbnb as the example on how, the dynamics of value creation and value capture plays out. So in the case of an asset sharing platform such as Airbnb, so you find that Airbnb helps the supply side, and this is of course homeowners and hosts, to increase the utilization of their existing assets. And of course, in the case of Airbnb, these assets are not vehicles or anything like that, but rather units and rooms and houses and condominiums and so on, flats and so on, to generate additional income and to get more yield out. Now, at this point, I'd like to pause once again and also point out that if you were to consult the literature, there has been this, for these past 5-6 years or so, there has been this movement as well that has been touting the platform economy as being more sustainable in the environmental sense and more sustainable in the financial sense as well. So I think in that sense, I think Airbnb could prove to be a good example. So say, for example, you live in a flat, and maybe your family is just, a family of 2 or 3 members, and you have some 1 or 2 extra rooms and so on. So in the previous economy, you would have to resort to, probably, I don't know, putting up notices in some, like over here in Malaysia, sometimes we just go to some convenience stores where they have community bulletin boards. You pay the shop owner whatever X amount of dollars, minimal sum, say, okay, sir, I would like to put up this, notice, room for rent, so on and so forth. Yeah. And then, of course, if it's a room, it's not economically viable for us to, advertise in the newspaper and so on, because that would cost quite a bit. So we'll be limited. So until and unless someone, that is also looking for a room or to walk into that particular convenience store and see and read our notice, the chances of us, utilizing or maximizing the return of investment from that particular extra room that we have in our flat is, I would say, quite mediocre. Yeah. But on the other hand, now with when you rely on a platform such as Airbnb and so on, it's infinite. You're not only basically reaching out to your small community within whatever range that you live in, residential area and so on, but you are, it goes across the world. Anyone that is thinking of moving to your area will have a decent chance of coming up and coming across your advertisement and eventually probably taking up your room. So for that aspect, in that aspect, the platform economy has also been said to be more economically sustainable, in the sense that it helps maximize our return of investment. So I think that example that you can see there. So on the other hand, the demand side, the demand side, travelers, these are people like us traveling, perhaps, business trip, leisure trip, attending a conference, so on and so forth. It helps us also find cheaper, more individual accommodation. If it's just me, it's I'm traveling alone, I'm attending a conference somewhere, what need is there for me to, take a large, 2-bedroom suite or something like that, and which is going to cost me an arm and a leg. All I need is a place to, put my head on the pillow and call it a night, and the next day go to get my business done, whatever it was. So it helps us, especially so during festival seasons. And I'm sure all of you, myself included, we've all experienced this situation where, by reason of the travel industry, they adopt a dynamic pricing strategy. So and during festival seasons, end of the year, Christmas, Deepavali, Eid, whatever it is, and so on, that without fail the price would double or even triple or whatever. Yeah. So in circumstances, in events such as that, platform providers such as Airbnb is able to help us hone in and focus on the best prices that we can get. So at the end of the day, I know it's trite to say a win-win, but it is essentially a win-win situation. Yeah. So how do they capture the value then? How do they capture the value? Simply by charging a commission or percentage on each booking, right? So that is with regards to an asset sharing platform. On the other hand, if it's a social media content platform, it's slightly different, because you see, on the supply side, and that is you, me, and a billion over people that subscribe. I mean that subscribe to YouTube and Facebook and Instagram and so on. Whatever content that we generate, we are not charged for it. We are not charged for it. You're free as long as it doesn't, uh, fall foul of any sensitive issues, matters, and something like that, and so on. You are free to share whatever it is that you want to share. It could be as simple as expressing your like for some particular thing, or it could be as complicated as producing some 3D image or video that you would want to share with your acquaintances and those who follow you, and you are not charged a single cent for that. But on the other hand, on the demand side, what you have is advertisers. And these are people who are constantly, as I think you've heard of the term that the market currently is oversaturated. I think anywhere in the world, developing middle income countries such as India, Malaysia, and so on, you walk into any mall, you walk into any supermarket, hypermarket, and you'll find a slew of products. It could be something as basic as detergent, laundry detergent, and you will find that that's 10, 20 different brands at different price points all shouting at you, not literally, but metaphorically shouting at you, take me, with different price points and claiming whiter than white and whatever else that they claim and so on. So it has become acute. The situation now has become acute. Those days, for example, the time when I used to be in the advertising industry, we did not, not that it was that long ago, but then again, we did not have the luxury of being able to focus, precision focus on customers. So if a client were to come to me and ask me to develop some kind of marketing strategy, of which would also include advertising and so on, the best I can do is what I would call a strategy which is analogous to carpet bombing. Yeah, you just, okay, what product is this? Okay, so for the maybe the most of the target audience is within this particular demographic range, and the best time to reach out to them would be prime time television, 8 to 9 or 9 to 10 or whatever, while they're watching the news and so on. But how sure are we the exact target audience that we are targeting is actually watching the show, watching your advertisement? We are not sure. And it is not cheap. Even those days, 10, 15 years ago when I was in the industry, it was already millions of local currency. And I'm sure it still is, if not more. But now, with these technologies available, especially platform businesses, as an advertiser, I'm able to hone in, I'm able to focus. And I think all of us have experienced the situation where, say, for example, maybe I was browsing today and looking for a new shirt to wear to work. And lo and behold, you find, by this evening, or at least by tomorrow, suddenly I find an extra number of ads being sent to me about shirts, work shirts, and something like that. I think all of us have experienced that. So that is what we are referring to. So advertisers, it helps them. And again, coming back to the earlier point where I was saying economically the platform business is more sustainable compared to the traditional economy, in the sense that you are now able to run targeted ad campaigns. If you are someone that I think is not my target audience, you will not be looking at, or you will not be swamped with any of my ads, because I know you will not be interested in my particular product. And the value extraction, the value capture is done by FB, by what do you call that, giving the advertisers the possibility of highly targeted ads, and that's that. Now, on the third one, in terms of facilitating the exchange of goods and services, it's not that very different from the first one that we saw, which is asset sharing. So basically, I think we are all very much aware of this. I don't need to go through in detail. You have, on the supply side, you have merchants looking to sell, and I need not put up a large investment. I need not lease some property. Need not, spend huge capital expenditure investment in setting up a brick and mortar shop and something like that. But rather, what I do, I sign up with Flipkart or Lazada, whoever it was. Immediately, I fall within their legal and commercial framework, and I'm able to start selling. And from the what do you call that, market facing, and I, as a consumer, I need not scour each and every shop just to buy one single thing, to compare prices. I can just sit on my sofa, flip up my laptop and just start browsing and looking at the different price points, and even more so consulting, by crowd sourcing, so to speak, by looking at the reviews and seeing, whether this product is actually worth my while and something like that. And of course, again, similar to the asset sharing platform, the exchange of goods and services platform extracts a fee by some manner of what do you call that, commission and so on. So now, earlier we were saying that, look, at the end of the day, in a technical perspective, from a the dynamics is actually the dynamics of a brokerage. But then brokerage need not be just limited to the typical type of brokerage that we usually think of when someone mentions the word. So over here, you find that, you know, there are three possible forms of brokerage. The first one being the, you know, the customary brokerage model. Second one being mediation, and the third one being coalition. Now, before I get on to explain these diagrams over here, now I would like to call your attention to the fact that the other aspect that you need to bear in mind when we are talking about this new normal, this new business platform economy, collaborative economy, sharing economy, the fact that it is triadic in nature. It is no longer dyadic. It was formerly, as we saw in the very first slide, formerly in the traditional economy, it was dyadic. Yeah, in the sense it was one-on-one, consumer to manufacturer, manufacturer to consumer, supplier to, you know, I have no access to who the supplier is. I don't know of the supplier, something like that, and so on. Yeah, but now in this age where we are hyper connected, we have access, yeah, to different parties, different actors, they call it, different actors, yeah, different individuals, different entities. So it is beyond dyadic, it's now triadic. Now, of course, to those of you who are probably not familiar with the term, triadic need not simply refer to a three party relationship. Anything beyond two, beyond a dyad, which is two, can be and is usually referred to as a triadic relationship. So now, the first one is the, as I said, typical brokerage. So you find that, okay, this is me and this is someone else, and B, which is a broker, kind of mediates. Yeah, it's mediation. So how one actor brokers between another two actors, yeah, becomes a middleman, middlewoman, whatever you want to call it. The behavior by which an actor influences, manages, facilitates, yeah, interactions between other actors. That's one. The other one, which is slightly more complex, is still a form of brokerage, but it falls under the concept of mediation, where there is a form of embeddedness within a dyad, and then a connection to a third party. So in this case, I think if I could use as an example or illustration, maybe perhaps in the case of Food Panda, which is online food delivery. So you have the Food Panda platform has some kind of interaction, facilitation, engagement with the particular restaurant, particular F&B outlet, yeah, food and beverage outlet, and then together reached out to a particular customer, which is that's you and I. Yeah, so that is very much a brokerage as well. And the most, I think, the third one rather is a coalition, where it is basically exactly what the word denotes. Coalition is a collaboration of more than two entities. Yeah, and this, I think, by way of illustration, I think I would like to point out to, say, for example, Apple. Yeah. Now we know that Apple, as much as they claim that everything comes from them, we know that it doesn't come from them. The software is, probably the design is theirs, but everything else, we have, even in Malaysia, we have some companies that are supplying parts and technology, certain remote sensing technologies and so on to Apple. And I'm sure very much of it also comes from India as well, from your IT industry and so on. It's all assembled and manufactured in China. Also, you find another example which I can probably allude to is Boeing, the jet plane Boeing, where different parts, it's such a huge thing. Different parts are made in different parts of the world, different technologies and so on. So the end product essentially is not even as much as it is branded as Apple, full stop, or Boeing, full stop. The end product essentially is actually the result of a coalition of many parties coming together, working together. And in that sense, Apple or Boeing would be the platform of sorts. So from that point, I think sometimes I've given this, spoken about this before once or twice, and I think some of the times I've been asked whether this only applies to a digital landscape. It only applies to an online landscape. I would say definitely not. Yeah, definitely not. Yes, it is more pronounced because it's easier to conduct platforms by way of what do you call that, a digital landscape, but that does not mean that this platform-based economy cannot be done brick and mortar style, yeah, or cannot be done off. Without out of the digital landscape. So as I said, so if you were to look at it from a structural point of view, Apple then becomes the platform provider. Apple then becomes the platform by which each and every one of its components and so on are actually centered around. And so it is the case uh, in the case of Boeing. And probably, I think we don't have time, but just quickly, I have also done a case study here a couple of years back on Starbucks Malaysia, and you know very much, yes, Starbucks has a digital presence, quite a strong digital presence, but Starbucks also has created an engagement platform, physical engagement platform, where it connects customers to some beneficiaries, and it becomes like a platform with the suppliers, with even third parties and so on. So if you are wondering at this point in time whether the platform economy, collaborative economy, network economy, whatever you want to call it, only applies in the digital landscape, it need not be so. Yeah, it need not be so. Now, if that is the case, ladies and gentlemen, then don't we need a new paradigm? Don't we need a new lens by which we view the market? Because you see, all this while we've been depending on, the and if any of you, and I'm sure many of you are from a business management background, you know that our literature has been going on for almost 100 years now, and very much based on probably industry 2.0 or something like that. So we need a new lens. We need a new lens, a new perspective to focus in and to make sense. Because at the end of the day, if you cannot make sense of something, then how are we going to activate it in the first place? Yeah. So for that, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to suggest that we can resort to the service dominant logic. Now, the service dominant logic is by no means something which is new in the market. It was in the beginning, initially conceptualized and pushed through by Professors Vago and Lush. I believe Professor Lush has passed on several years back, leaving only Professor Vago now. But in any case, this has multiplied and compounded and extended beyond their initial writings and so on, so much so that I think some of you, I think definitely you'll be familiar that this is a subfield within management and marketing itself, service dominant logic. Now, there are several terms which I need to clarify before, I'll do that in time. Now, in this past 20 years or so since it was first introduced, there's been hundreds, if not more, papers that have been reported and published in the literature. Initially, probably it was something that was envisioned as a new paradigm for marketing, but now it has extended to tourism, extended to industrial organization, HR, you name it. Yeah, so you can, in your free time, you can Google it, as I said earlier, using the term. Yeah, but anyway, fundamentally, SDL, which is SD, service dominant logic, asserts that marketing is moving away, and it has moved away from a goods dominated view that centers on transaction of tangible goods to a service dominant view which focuses on intangible resources and relationships. Now, the technical term, we don't have time, but the technical term for this is operant resources with a T for Thailand. There is the opposite word, the converse word is operand with a D. Now, I need to stop here and point out to you, please do not confuse it with services. Vago and Lush, when they conceptualize a service dominant logic, are referring to operant resources as service. So essentially, what you are looking at is knowledge and skills. Now, if it is the first time that you've heard of this term, probably as it was for me when I first came across it many years ago, it may be a bit difficult to get your head around it. But essentially, what it means is that it is the resources that are used to act on the commodity itself. So it could be knowledge and skills and so on. Yeah. So it is not services in the traditional sense, it's service, and it's spelled in a singular manner. So its underlying proposition is that organizations, that is markets and society, are fundamentally concerned with the exchange of service, singular, intended as the application of competences, that is, as I said earlier, knowledge and skills for the benefit of the party or the self. So that is in reference to value. Now, as I said, over the years, yeah, STL has evolved, has developed, and now has quite a sizable corpus in the literature. But quickly, maybe I can just go through with you. Um, um, the initiators of STL have developed or proposed 11 fundamental premises. Basically, these are the underlying structure to ST logic. And the first one is that service is the fundamental basis of exchange. So here again, as I said, yeah, service is in reference to operant resources, knowledge and skills, basis of all exchange. Yeah, indirect exchange marks the fundamental basis of exchange, meaning we are not consciously aware of the skill that is being passed to us because it is being masked by the goods that contains that particular skill or resource that has been acted on, or the money, the way that the money is being exchanged, or the institutions. And by institutions I mean, not only institutions in the general sense, but also rules and norms and beliefs and regulations and so on. Yeah. Now, in this particular paradigm, goods, yeah, products, and also services with a plural, become the distribution mechanism. Because if, let's say, you exchange skills and resources, correct? Skills and knowledge. And that skill is then embodied in that particular product, embodied in that particular service. Yeah. So goods, both durable and non-durable, derive their value through the use of the service that they provide. Remember, value is something that makes you better off than you were prior to using it, prior to buying it, prior to whatever, right? Operant resources are the fundamental source of strategic benefit. So again, coming now to probably strategic management, you say, oh, what's your competitive advantage? What is your unique selling proposition, so on and so forth. So in the eyes of service dominant logic, operant resources, that is the knowledge, the skills, that you bring into the picture, that these are the elements of competitive advantage. So for example, I've always wondered, look, and it happens all over the world. Now, I think if you compare an iPhone to any Android phone, yeah, uh, price of an iPhone is easily double, if not more. Yeah, but and in terms of functionality, if you talk about functionality, for the most part, I think it's almost the same. Whatever your Android phone can do, your iPhone can do as well. Yeah, and that is in spite of the price. But in spite of that, you find that whenever anywhere in the world, yeah, whenever an iPhone is being launched, a new iPhone is being launched, people are queuing up overnight, if not longer, just to be the first one to get hold of that particular product. In fact, it can be quite humorous in the sense that if you've watched these videos before on Facebook or whatever, the moment that this person gets his or her hands on that particular new phone, they will be seen running happily and screaming and cheering and so on, as if they've done something great. But on the other hand, whenever any other Android phone launches a new product, I doubt you'll see even one person queuing up. Not overnight, probably not even before the shop opens. Why is that? Yeah. So I don't know. I've asked this question many times to my students and my friends as well. I think essentially what you can say is that the way that it's positioned, especially in terms of the aesthetic value, you know, it's beautiful, it looks beautiful, and it's beautiful to use, and it's user friendly, and it's just, you know, it just looks fantastic, right? So in that sense, I'm using this as an illustration. In that sense, the skill that Apple, if you can say that, the skill that Apple brings into the game is basically in terms of its aesthetic value, the way they design their products, the way that they position their products. If you watch their advertisements and so on, yeah. So it can be that as well. Now, the other important, very important aspect, which is, I think, very prominent, very pronounced in the market today, is that value is co-created. I no longer believe you if you say, oh, Sham, this product is XYZ. No, I will determine myself. And how I determine it depends. I may speak to my friends, I may go online and read some reviews. And I think this has become the standard practice, right? If any one of us, especially if we are investing in any product which is of substantial value, you don't just walk into a car showroom and say, okay, I'll have this car. You don't do that. Yeah. Probably at least 6 or 7 months prior to that, you've been speaking to people, your friends, and asking your uncle and saying, how is that car? Is that okay? And reading the reviews online, and then finally then you decide, okay, I think this is the car for me, right? Yeah. So the value then, just because I don't know, Toyota or Honda says, oh, it's whatever, it does, you do not take it on face value. So therefore, from the perspective of SDL, value is co-created. It is very much ideographic in the sense that what may be of value to you may not be of value to me. It becomes subjective. Yeah, it becomes subjective. The other interconnected aspect of that is that now if value is co-created, now if value is subjective in this new economy of ours, then actors, which are the manufacturers, producers, makers of products and services, no longer can deliver value, but they can participate in the creation and offering. Here you are, sir, this is my product, and this product is XYZ. Whether you as the consumer buy whatever positioning that he or she or the company is pushing to you, it depends. As I said earlier, it's ideographic, it's subjective, right? So no longer it is a push down effect as we saw in the first slide. No longer is it unidirectional. I say this product is good, so you must say it's good. No longer. We don't have that anymore. And none of us buy into that, because what we do is, like I said, we talk to people, we go online, whatever you want to buy, no matter how small, there will be someone that has reviewed it either on YouTube or on Google, whatever. And I think that's become a standard practice now. Yeah. So if that is the case, then in the view of SDL, uh, it is inherently customer oriented. So you are now truly, as I said earlier, we used to say and used to think that customer is king, but I humbly suggest that only now in this new economy, slowly customer is becoming king. We were never kings or queens, I think, in the traditional economy, but only now we are slowly becoming kings, because we get to determine whether I am going to accept whatever value positioning that you've given to your product. Yeah. The next one is social and economic actors. Resource integrators, it's okay, not so much related to us. And this is what I was referring to. Value is uniquely and phenomenologically determined by the beneficiary. It's idiosyncratic, it's experiential, meaning, it becomes something which is subjective. More or less, yes, in the general sense, it's not that entirely different. What you think or what you value in that particular product is not going to be entirely different from what I value. But, each and every one of us will attach some additional meanings, some additional significance, which is only known to me or known to you. That is what is meant here. Yeah. And finally, there needs to be a framework. And here, institutions here, I'm not referring to institutions in the traditional sense of buildings and so on, but institutions in the sense that institutions are humanly devised rules, norms, and beliefs. Yeah, you need a framework. In the absence of which the exchange and the market will not be able to function, and that is what is meant by that. So, if all that is if that is the case, then we need to acknowledge that the nature of value in SDL, and I dare say in our current situation now, is has changed, has evolved. Yeah. So if you look at it from five aspects, now you find that value is central. That I think has not changed, because as I said earlier, value has always been central, whether we realize it or not, whether we consciously attribute it or not. It's been something that has been fundamental to all manner of exchanges. Yeah, the reason for social and economic interaction. So that much, I think it has not changed. What has changed though is that value now is co-created. Yeah, and I think this has also been in the literature now for over 20 years, and again more pronounced with the what do you call that, advent of the digital landscape and so on, where value is created through integration, exchange of resources, multiple actors, firms, customers, suppliers, government agencies. Somehow, some way, someone is involved in it. Yeah. So again, maybe in this aspect also, we can maybe synchronize this with Freeman's stakeholder theory, where you have a huge expanse of stakeholders, direct and indirect, everyone, depending on the nature of your business, every one of the stakeholders, all the way from the man next to your factory right up to, the government, has some manner of influence or effect on the value that you are actually what do you call that, offering to the market. It is contextual, dependent on the presence of other resources. Is the context. What value is there for an iPhone if you are in the middle of the jungle and there is no phone service, no mobile phone service? It's no good. You can't even, it's not like you can light a fire with your iPhone or anything like that, or make coffee with it. Nothing. You can't do anything like that. So it all depends on the context as well. Yeah, value is also multidimensional. It is no longer unidimensional. It has individually to you. It has, like I said earlier, some kind of, okay, generally we agree this is the value, but in addition to that, there are some top-ups that you put on, and to make give meaning to that particular product. This means what to me? Yeah, it also has social value. You are driving around in a particular car, someone else sees you, someone that doesn't know you, can make some impression, makes some impression, and guess the kind of person you are, whether right or wrong. It has social implications as well. And of course, now in the technological sphere, everything with devices, I think, was it today, or is it today, or was it the previous day? I think one of the speakers was giving a talk about Internet of Things, where all the devices are connected and so on. And this is also, and so in this, it is all meaning laden. Yeah, it's all embedded with meaning that you and I may not share, but nonetheless significant. Yeah. Finally, it is emergent in the sense that, remember earlier we said it's predetermined. Okay, it comes out of the factory and this is the value. Well, it's not. It is something that has a life of its own. The manufacturer, the producer, the platform owner, whatever it is, that is only able to say, look, this is the value potentially from it. But what aspect of that value is enhanced, what aspect of that value is reduced, or what new value is added on to that particular thing, it's not sure. It depends on, how it is discussed in the social media landscape, depends on how you use it, so on and so forth. In that sense, value then is emergent. Yeah. So quickly, this is this is how the process is played out, where the actors are involved in resource integration. Then you have service, singular, exchange, and then with the framework of institutions and institutional arrangements which create service ecosystems which I can, and also quickly, this is you find that there are three aspects, yeah: public, social, economic, and all of it is interconnected. And I think best shown by this diagram, where it is, you find that there are embellishments to the previous model of where, we saw earlier, supplier going to producer, consumer, but now everything is connected. Everyone is connected somehow. For that matter, the consumer may even have access to the supplier in certain cases if it is online or something like that. Now, if you layer it all up, and I know this is a bit of an eyesore, and I beg your forgiveness for that, but just as the final slide, yeah, so it is planted in, and you see that the resource integration happens at different levels: micro level, meso level, and macro. And that is why SDL keeps insisting on the institutional framework, which is simply, how the market dynamics are. Yeah. So with that, I come to the end of my presentation, and I thank you so much for your attention. Um, Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Abdulrazak. It was a very wonderful presentation. Really, you have given a clear note about traditional economy and the new economy, as well as you have given the types and examples of platform business, communication platform, multi-aided platform types and examples, and also the research platforms. So, sir has given a clear idea about valuation and value capture. So he said that it is not superfluous. It is a platform that helps to sell the products or services and generate the content. They don't directly provide services that get offered on their platform. So value creation is by way of a brokerage, asset sharing, social media content, exchange of goods and services. So has given more idea about economically sustainable and how we can get the return on investment based upon the social media and the content platforms. Example, Facebook, where the Facebook extracts value by giving advertisers the possibility for highly targeted groups. Thank you, sir. It was really a wonderful presentation, and you have added more on service dominant logic, which was a new concept for me. I hope so it will be a new concept for others also. Sir has given detailed idea about service dominant logic and says the dominant view which focuses on intangible, the operant resources and not on the services resources, and which is always based upon knowledge and skills, and the nature of the value in service dominant logic. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your wonderful presentation. And participants would have gathered more information about the service dominant logic, which is a new concept, as well as the topic which you have poured on us, the new model for the business. So we have one question, sir. Is this possible for a small business group? Sir?
Yes, ma'am. Carry on. What was the question?
Yes, sir. So we have given a detailed explanation about all these new business models. Is it possible for a very small business?
Yes, all the more. I would say, I would argue that in this day and age, with the ability of platforms, it has actually expanded the opportunities which are available. You need not, what you call that, even, I personally know of some people who have, been doing some side business while they're working, by supplying cookery and kitchenware and so on. And you see, one of the, if in accounting, for example, one of the major issues would be the storage costs, and you would want to get rid of your stock as what do you call that, as soon as possible, because the longer you hold on to the stock, and that actually eats up on your operating expenditure. But in the case of a platform, then it can be as per order for the most part. And you see, if you remember the last slide where it looked almost like a spider web, and that is the case. You see, so if, say for example, I'm selling kitchenware on Flipkart, for example, I need not be the first instance where I can actually order from someone else, and I then become a sub broker within the brokerage model, and I need not pay some kind of registration fee. I need not stock up and spend on capital expenditure in terms of what do you call that, storage space or anything like that. So as and when the order comes in, I then in turn order to my supplier, and then supplier supplies to me. I then pass it on to the platform. The platform then supplies to the end consumer. So it is a spider web actually, and that's what's happening.
Thank you, sir. It was a clear explanation for me as well as the participants. And is there any model for service dominant logic, sir?
Yeah,
Is
I
it
think
a model?
it's a very wide literature, and as I said now, very much found in different areas of business. So I think in terms of, I personally had done one particular case study in Malaysia regarding Starbucks, which I mentioned. And it is, of course, when they were doing it, they are not, I mean, not being academicians, they are not aware that it is based on service dominant logic. But when I studied it and made a case study out of it, I found that the structure is basically based on service dominant logic, where it is simply a project where using the brokerage model, Starbucks then connects various parties which otherwise would not even know each other, do not even know that each other exists. They are able to connect, and it becomes like a big spider web where everything is centered around coffee and Starbucks, but in actual fact, so many other things are going on, including corporate social responsibility project, including customer engagement, and so on and so forth. So I think it will take quite a while to explain the entire thing, but what I can say as a short answer is that there are many business models out there which are basically now, whether you realize or not, running on a service dominant logic model. That's it.
Thank you, sir. So, business, if it runs on service logic model, it will become an efficient and then profitable business. I hope so.
Yep.
Thank you so much. It was a clear explanation.
Thank
And
you.
I don't know how far in India we are following the service dominant logic model, but still I will make a review of it to know more about service dominant logic. This was a new concept for me. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah.